about to begin. To begin, the first thing is an acknowledgement of country. Appreciate the fact that this land always is and always will be Aboriginal land.
Guys, excuse me.
I'd like to just announce quickly before we begin the facilitation a group that met today, elected facilitation team to help coordinate tonight's meeting. That facilitation team will vote on immediately following the announcement of the meeting. Have the opportunity to support it or oppose it depending on how you feel. So myself and Alicia are going to be the co-facilitators for this evening. We're going to be the guys that put the proposals up for a vote and also help work through the agenda items in a second. Shelley and Steve, Shelley and Steve are going to be our support facilitation team. So they're going to be helping with, if you want to get on the speaking list, you talk to these guys, and they're also going to be helping us with getting through the motions and facilitating this meeting. And Raphael is going to be the guy who writes, he's volunteered for the speaking list, creating the speaking list, the discussions that we have later on. So what we're going to be asking for is that people indicate to any one of these three, come up to the front, put their name down on the speaking list as the meeting goes on. We don't, as of yet, we don't have a timekeeper, so we're going to stick to the past meetings and 2-minute time limits. If you need an extension, you can ask for it at the end of 2 minutes, but a 2-minute time limit on speaking. We need somebody to volunteer to be the timekeeper, and we also need someone to volunteer. We also need a timekeeper. You need a stopwatch and a bell. Do we have the bell?
James has it.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. So, sorry, you're Elise. Elise volunteered as a timekeeper. We need a minute taker. Now, it's an important role. We've got a minute taker. Fantastic.
Paper and
probably have a bunch of paper.
try and just type it straight in. Oh yeah.
Christian is like 100 words a minute.
Sorry, what's your name, sir?
Christian.
Christian. So Christian,
And he doesn't even
we're going to ask to remote. So, very simply, you only do this once. To support a motion, put your hands up. If you don't support a motion, but you're happy with the majority who support it to make a decision, we're going to call for stand aside. Put your hand up for stand aside. If you really don't support a motion, and you don't want it to go through regardless of how many people support it, you indicate that you block it. And when you block it, you are asked to come to the front and explain your opposition to the motion. So say all of us, we're all young liberals, we will facilitate the meeting. Everyone was in agreement that you wanted us, but you really felt like the meeting should at least have one person who wasn't a young liberal. You might block it and then come up to the front and say, I don't think the meeting should be run by young liberals. As it is, I think I'm the only young liberal here, so I think it should be fine. So, I'm going to call for a support. Can I see fingers in the air if you support the facilitation team as announced? Okay, can I ask for anybody who's standing aside indicate? Do you want to speak on why you're standing aside?
In London, they've had similar problems to us with facilitation. They ended up solving it by having a consensus first try, 2/3 majority the second try. And I think that's the sort of model we should adapt for our meetings here.
Do you oppose the team though? Just talking about the team, you oppose the team? No?
No people propose.
Okay, we're going to get onto the structure as one of the agenda items a little bit later on. So,
Can I ask a question about timing? You want to make
just say 2 minutes, just say time, and we'll cut it off at that point. If you get told to cut it off, we appreciate it as soon as possible. Make you finish that sentence and you cut it off. Unless you really want an extension, in which you ask for an extension. But that's structure. Sorry. First of all, getting back to the point, just on the facilitation team, does anyone want to block the facilitation team? Indicate now.
It's going
Sorry. Because we don't have policies, I understand the point of having a facilitation team at all. We should just all be here chatting and put your hands up to the meeting.
That's the structure though. So you oppose the team. Okay. So the team is passed for this evening and only for this evening.
We have a position.
Oh, sorry.
Can I, how about we change leaders every couple of days or something like that? So there's no leader. Yeah, exactly. So we're facilitators, coordinators.
So, first of all, we had a couple of announcements just about the way this GA has been working based on discussions earlier, and we're going to get through this really quickly. So, the first thing that we as a facilitation team and the people who are working group wanted to say at the beginning of the meeting was, as frustrating as it is, to recognise that everybody's voice is important as your own. And everybody has a right to speak and argue and debate just the same as you do. As frustrating as that might be sometimes, that's why we're here. Democracy is not an easy go, quick factory line, getting stuff in and out and getting things done regardless of opposition. Democracy is about listening to the debate, listening to the ideas and accepting the fact that we are all equal in this space, which can sometimes lead people to be frustrated. But we in the facilitation working group, we were thinking that the frustration is actually one of the signs of the true democracy. So we're always working to try and improve it, and that's what the facilitation working group is about. So if you, sitting in this audience, participating in this General Assembly, if you want to contribute to how these General Assemblies are run, please come along at 4 o'clock in the afternoon to the facilitation working group for the General Assembly for that day. Every day at 4 PM that working group happens. Come along as soon as you can. We had people today turning up after 4 and we vote on proposals at the end of the facilitation working group. So there's discussions all the way along. But we have to have it every day. Okay. Okay. Wait. We want to get through this quickly. So, if you are frustrated and you feel as though you can figure out a better way of doing this, instead of halfway through this meeting starting to yell out or get angry or getting frustrated and angry about how things are going, try and see if you can come along tomorrow at 4 o'clock or after 4 to participate in a discussion group about how we can improve this again tomorrow to keep it going. Finally, we have decided, or we have considered, and we're going to put this to the vote, obviously, the use of the whiteboard within these meetings. Now, our proposal, which we came up with at the facilitation working group, was that from the end of this meeting, this whiteboard is going to be the General Assembly agenda whiteboard. From the end of this meeting, if you have an agenda item that you wish to talk about at tomorrow's General Assembly, come up at any point between tonight and 2 p.m. tomorrow and write your agenda item on the whiteboard. Trying to structure it within like broader groupings so we don't have 1,000 little individual points. At 2 p.m. tomorrow, we're going to vote on this tomorrow. Put this agenda list on the web. If you work or another are not able to be here, so everyone can see the rough outline of what's going to be on the agenda for tomorrow's meeting. But after 2 p.m. you can still keep adding to it. So 2 p.m. is just where we're up to 2 p.m. Between 2 p.m. and the meeting, you can come and add to it again and keep going. Let the meeting know what the agenda is from the beginning. What we're going to ask for today is that we're going to have 5 minutes from now where people can get up today and come and put their name, put ideas on the agenda list for tonight's meeting, because obviously the whiteboard hasn't been around before. So that's our proposal. What happens tomorrow for tomorrow's meeting and what happens for tonight's meeting. So maybe we split up into 2 proposals and vote on each of them. Can I see those who agree with the whiteboard being used for tonight's meeting the way as suggested? Can I see anybody who wants to stand aside? Consensus. Can I see anybody who opposes using the whiteboard?
When there's no room on the wall.
At 2 p.m. is the... So just to explain it one more time, at 2 p.m. whatever's on here gets put onto the web. So the web, this is a rough outline of what we're talking about tonight.
Join the most democratic. Okay, 2 o'clock. Right.
You want to stand up? You want to speak?
Join more democratic.
Can you come up and speak to the group?
We're still out of speed.
Guys.
Who's not the cutoff?
No. Do you want to...
2 p.m. is just the facilitation time to allow the those items to come to the web. But the whiteboard is open until the start of GA that time, so you can still add items to it, but it facilitates everybody else who can't make it.
Sure. So one thing I forgot to mention with the voting structures, and maybe that could have helped here. If you have a question about what you're voting on, put your hand up in the shape of a C. And C means clarification. So as opposed to you have a question about what you heard going on, they can see something for clarification, you'll instantly give them a chance to speak, and then the issue you have will be clarified. So that might have been a clarification rather than a blocking. So do we have any blocks of using the whiteboard for tomorrow and putting up a rough list of 2 p.m. Okay, that proposal is passed. Very quickly, second proposal tonight. Can I see consensus for having 5 minutes for people to come up and put what they want for tonight's agenda on the board? Everybody in consensus with that? Please show me your hand. Anybody who wishes to stand aside? Do you want to talk about it?
Yeah, that was...
Okay, so we're not having any discussions on stand aside. Okay, so we got 2 blocks. You want to come to the front? point this out.
Thank you. Susan here. Not so much not opposed to the idea of us putting items up for a discussion tonight, but rather than people lining up to write them on the whiteboard, it might be a simpler process to just call for items and someone to write them down.
Clarification?
Do we have an agenda already?
No.
Okay.
Kill the pigs!
I didn't see anyone. I just say what Susan just said was great, but I think we don't even need that. I think we're already in a group where we can all hear each other, and I don't think there's a huge amount of ideas. I think that we have to get through. We've got the camp. We have to keep the camp tonight, have as many people stay here as possible. But tonight, I just think if people have got ideas, they can just throw up their hand, and these guys only roll us to just point at them, and then we all start to listen to that person. When they're finished, they point to the next person, because we don't want to create. If you think of the 1% and the 99% as a picture, it's like a small circle and a huge circle. This is what we're starting to look like. We've got a small circle of facilitators and a huge circle of voices. Let's not recreate what we're trying to fight against. Let's make one circle. People want to speak. Yeah. These guys are going to point to them. That's what we need to know about tonight's meeting, I think. Woo! I agree. Thank you.
So, one of the agenda items is the form of this meeting, or the structure. Like the structure. But
Are you filming or just doing stills? Are you filming or just doing stills? We're filming. Okay. Sorry, I was going to say go. Probably right.
All those in favour? Yeah. You just don't have the right.
Well, it's the agenda.
That's better.
okay, so just to clarify.
Does the daily agenda, is that automatically going to include an update on the workshop and the camp, and then the discussion will go on?
We had some thoughts about the way of including that, but that was going to come later. But those things were going to be put on the whiteboard and then talked about at the General Assembly. Anything that people want to talk about General Assembly goes on the whiteboard.
Yeah, it'd just be nice to have a daily update. No matter what everybody wants to talk about, we all want to know what's going on here.
Okay, for the moment, just while we're sorting out the structure of this GA, can we leave that, fill that?
Just a clarification, that when someone speaks, they're then a discussion about the idea. Just someone says something and that's it.
So the second proposal, for the way we work tonight without the agenda is that this is an open discussion. So anybody who wishes to talk about anything, put their hands up. They go on the speaking list. Do they go on the speaking list? So the second proposal, wait till we vote. The second proposal is an open discussion about what's going on today, what we want to do tomorrow. Put your hand up, put you on the speaking list, go through the speaking list when it's your time to talk, you talk, explain what you want to say, whether that's a response to somebody else, or whether... So this is rather than being a general assembly. So, can we vote on the second proposal? Without the agenda, raise our hands, we talk about stuff, we vote on proposals, speaking list, no agenda. Can we see if there's consensus that you agree?
Excuse me.
No, wait, clarification. Just tonight, open forum. How many people support an open forum? Do we have any stay aside? Do we have any blocks? Okay. As there are a number of blocks, I move that this discussion, an open forum idea, moves to tomorrow's General Assembly working group.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Is there any opposition to talking about an open forum at tomorrow's General Assembly working group? Any block? Want to speak?
Yeah, what's the point? I mean, an open forum, we have voted before to the agenda thing for tomorrow and for later.
I think that we've passed the idea of putting ideas to talk about in future. We need to establish how we're going to tackle it. And then it goes on to
Are you filming now? No, no, just walked into the Oh, into the
We haven't had any arguments for an agenda. Maybe it would be useful if the people who block could explain why they think an agenda is important. Because we've heard the case for why it isn't important. I think it's important that people who think an agenda is important explain why, and maybe the people then who think an agenda isn't important might change their minds.
Does anybody want to speak on behalf of why an agenda for tonight's meeting is important? Okay, well let's start from the right, move to the left.
I'm just trying to say.
Does anybody else want to speak on why an agenda is important?
It feels like it's self-evident, but we did try this in a fashion. We tried this in a fashion the Thursday organising meeting we had before the camp started, in the sense that we basically did have a free-for-all where there wasn't a defined agenda, partly because the facilitators weren't able to control the meeting, and the result of that is that nothing gets clarified. We had a 3-hour meeting, and I think all we decided was, to put out a press release and have a General Assembly, and that took us 3 hours. I think it's, what you have when you don't have an agenda is you jump from one thing to the next. People speak about, one person speaks about one thing, one about another. You do have a free-for-all, and it's not an effective way of getting anything decided. And it also means that you discuss the same thing several times, rehash discussions. I think there's a reason that most meetings have agendas, because it's a more democratic way to discuss things, because instead of jumping from one thing to the next, overturning decisions, discussing things 3 times, you discuss things sequentially. It doesn't stop people raising new items, etc.
Well, I think that the most important thing about having an agenda is for optimizing the actual assembly, so that it's not tedious. So we can have clear stuff. So if we can all contribute to that.